In this video, I would like to tell you what a culture shock I experienced 11 years ago when I moved to the States, to California, San Diego. Originally, I'm from Hungary, Budapest. This is where I was born and raised. I have traveled all across Europe. I have lived in other countries. I spent many years living in Rome. And when I decided to move to the States, no wonder that I was in a culture shock when I moved to San Diego, California. So these are the top things that was very odd and strange to me. Some of these things are more positive than negative. Some of them might be more negative than positive. Either ways, they are just different than what I was used to at the time. So let's get to it. Tipping. I have to admit, I'm probably the worst tipper in San Diego. We don't tip in Europe the way here in America. Here, it's part of the salary of the servers, the waiters. So, in fact, they make so much money, or can make a lot of money, sometimes even more than someone with degrees, a master's degree would make. In Europe, the tips are tiny. Here, tips are big, just like everything else. One of the first things that stood out for me was the lack of street lights at night. No wonder that people drive everywhere, especially in the evening, so that they can see, because the cars have good and better lights than the streets. So in Europe, when you walk on the streets, even in the evening, there are lights. But here, hardly any. Is the hi, how are you, how has your day been? Coming from Europe, coming from Hungary, we are not the master of small talk, to say the least. So I felt extremely uncomfortable when I went to a bank, when I went to the store and people were asking me about my well-being and about my day. I didn't really know how to handle it. Eventually, though, I thought, okay, if they ask me a question, I'm just gonna answer. And I started telling them about how I was doing. And then they were looking at me in a very strange way. In Hungary and anywhere in Europe, there is a good working public transportation that people use because it's cheaper than using a car and it's easier in some sense, in some ways. I moved here, I saw that everybody was driving everywhere. And in fact, not only they were driving, but people also stigmatize the use of public transportation, with the exception of few major cities like New York City or San Francisco. In fact, when I went to visit San Francisco, I could not believe that just using a working, smooth public transportation can make me feel so home, like being at home. And using cars everywhere, driving on the highway was pretty stressful to me, because when I lived back in Europe, I never had to drive, hardly ever. I only drove just to get my license, driver's license. And when I actually had to drive here, I remember that my heart was beating faster. I had a knot in my chest, throat, stomach. I was shaking. And not only I had to drive that I was not used to, but I had to drive on these giant roads, 6 lanes, highways, and it was pretty scary. But it took me about a month and then I got used to it. Everything is so big in the US. If you go to a supermarket, even the milk, they sell it by the gallon or 2 gallons. It's so big. Orange juice, everything. Like, there's no smaller quantity, especially when I went to Costco for the very first time. I still remember I asked my husband that, do you guys eat all this? I couldn't understand why would people need to buy bulks of toilet paper and kitchen towel and certain drinks or food, because in Europe you just shop a little bit and you go to the store every week. Here instead you go to the store maybe every other week or once a month, and then you just stock up your entire fridge. So everything is just bigger here. Everything. Even when you go to a restaurant, the steaks are bigger, the potatoes are bigger, the portions are bigger than over there. Coffee. Now, two things about coffee. The standard coffee here, which over there in Hungary, in Europe, we call it American coffee. Here you just call it coffee. And I actually call it coffee flavored water because it's so bad. I didn't understand why would people go to a Starbucks or any coffee shop and order in a to-go cup, 16-ounce to-go cup, black coffee, and then just drink it on the street or in their car, when they can get the same exact drink at home for 20 cents. Not only they drink in their car or walking on the street, but they also have breakfast like that. So that was very strange for me to get used to. I drink my coffee at home. I make real espresso coffee, which is strong and delicious. Going to the store, to the bank, or just to take your dog for a walk, basically leaving your house in flip-flops and sweatpants, was the strangest thing to me. Back in Europe, back in Hungary, or anywhere really, in any European countries, when you leave your home, you dress up like a normal person. My husband told me to go to the bank and he was wearing his sweatpants, t-shirt and flip-flops. I looked at him and I asked, "Are you gonna leave the house like this?" When we got to the bank, he wasn't the only one wearing sweatpants and flip-flops. And that is something that I got used to very quickly, because it's so good when you feel comfortable. And I wear my yoga pants, my tops, and my flip-flops almost year-round. California, when you go to the restroom, public restrooms, there's always toilet paper and there's always the toilet seat cover. This is something that you wouldn't necessarily, or you wouldn't actually find for the most part in Europe, in Hungary, in Italy. Sometimes there's no toilet paper, let alone toilet seat cover. So thank you for this great culture shock. Tax. When you go to a store in Europe, the price that you see is the price that you pay at checkout. Here instead, in the US, prices do not include tax. This was a little bit stressful for me initially because I never knew if I had enough money or not when I had to pay for something. But here in the US, tax is not included in the price that you see on the shelves. You find the flag, the US flag, everywhere. Obviously at official buildings, government buildings, but also when there's a celebration, a holiday, even people put out their own flags in front of their yard. Patriotism has such a different culture here. It doesn't mean something bad. The way we were raised and the way we grew up in Europe, in Hungary, patriotism has a negative connotation. Here, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, you can be a patriot, put the flag outside, and just be proud of being an American. Air conditioning. I was freezing in the first couple of years living here in San Diego. There's AC blasting at any given time of the year in the stores. I would always carry a long sleeve when I went to a store just to make sure that I'm not cold. And even people, when they jump in their car, no matter what the weather's outside, usually they turn on the heater. I mean, they turn on the AC. I would turn on the heater when someone turns on the AC. But it took me a while, almost 10 years probably, to start liking air conditioning, and by now I really appreciate it, especially when we have those crazy hot summers sometimes. People are so friendly. People smile at you at the street, even if they don't know you, you just pass by. They compliment you for your dress, for your hair. They just start having a conversation with you, whether you're standing in line, whether you're walking your dog. Doesn't matter, you just start talking to strangers. This is kind of like the small talk, but yet there's something meaningful about it, because who wouldn't appreciate a nice smile or a kind word on any given day? So I actually appreciate small talk. First, I thought it was superficial, and it is to a degree, but it can really make somebody else's day and brighten it up. Advertising. Here it's allowed and it's okay to bash another company's product on national TV. Maybe it has something to do with freedom of speech, but I know when I was growing up in Hungary, it was not allowed to talk bad or say bad things about another company's product. Going to the doctor. First of all, there's no free healthcare, which I don't necessarily like, but I like the quality of the healthcare you can get. And when you go to the doctor here, just like in the movies, you have to fill out a big stack of paper. And it takes you longer to fill out those different pages and paperwork, all the forms, than actually seeing the provider, the doctor. What I don't appreciate, the providers usually see you for a couple of minutes, maybe 5, maybe 10 if you're very lucky, but probably because they are also pressured by the health insurance companies and the regulations. They have to meet certain quota, they have to see certain amount of patients in an hour. It's just like in and out, in and out. So it can feel very impersonal. Water is free in restaurants. Woohoo! In Europe, you have to pay for water when you go to a restaurant. Here in America, you go to a restaurant, they bring you water. They put usually ice in it, which initially would freeze my throat. It's just like that AC story. But yeah, you get free water every single time when you go to a restaurant. To visit home, here it means that you travel 6-7 hours in a car or on a plane, kind of like flying across Europe. That's what it feels like, because people live so far from each other that it's an actual trip, a road trip to go home. I absolutely love that you can buy literally any kind of food. No matter what cuisine you want to try, there's a way to find the ingredients, there's a way to find a restaurant. So I really appreciate that this diversity also brings some really good food. Americans always find a reason to party and to celebrate. They celebrate all holidays, every culture's holidays, and I love that. Whether you're Irish or not, you're going to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. Whether you're Mexican or not, you're gonna celebrate Cinco de Mayo. Love the spirit of celebration and party time here in the US. When you drive a car in Europe and you get to a stop sign, you have to yield to the person who's on your right. Here, instead, you get to go first if you got to the stop sign first. It almost sounds like some high school game. Who gets to the stop sign first? That gets to go. That person gets to go. Another shock was to me that even though the traffic light is red, if you come to a full stop and nobody's coming, you can still make a right turn. What drives me crazy up until now is the drive-thru. Just drive-through ATMs, drive-through restaurants, drive-through Starbucks, drive-through everything. And I'm a big proponent of let's park your car and walk inside. Unless you have some mobility challenges, I understand. But it's okay to park your car, walk into that store, and when you're done, just go back to your car. No drive-through. I would vote against it. Downtown. Here downtown, even though it's considered to be the city center, it's really not a place where people especially people with kids and families, would like to live. It's more like just those tall skyscrapers with office buildings and restaurants and clubs, and maybe some condos where professionals, mainly single professionals, live. And in Europe, downtown, which is really the city center, is really a nice place to hang out, and it's nice to live there as well. The best customer service is here in the US, hands down, no doubt. I have never witnessed anything like that before. I still remember when my husband would call the cell phone company provider, and basically he would just negotiate with them to get a lower price. That is unheard of back in Europe. And just in general, customer service is really there for the customers. You can talk to them, you can negotiate with them. They are really there to help you, and if you're persistent, even though they don't want to help you, but you're persistent enough, you're gonna get what you want. And I love that. And they are polite, and they are nice, and they are kind. And unfortunately, in Hungary, my experience with customer service has been horrible. In Hungary or anywhere in Europe where I lived, my experience with customer service in those countries were not too good. So, US customer service, hands down, the best. Everything is about convenience. When you go to Costco or any big store, there's fruit cut up, there's sandwiches already made and all packaged and pre-packaged and pre-made, and there are paper plates and plastic forks and knives. Everything is about convenience. And it's really easy to get used to that. People pay the price if that means they save some time. Everything gets built here so quickly. Even up until today, I'm really surprised when I see that they pull up a house, a building, in a matter of few months, or they fix the road really quickly. So there's lots of rules and regulations here, but it seems to be working because everything gets done so quickly, so efficiently, and so well. The traffic signs. Everything is written out. There's no special signs that you need to know what it means exactly. Most of the traffic signs here are actual signs with words on it. And I like that because in Europe, there are so many different signs and you have to memorize the meaning of those different signs. Here, you just need to know how to read and then you're good to go. I love you and I love you too. Everybody loves everybody. Friends tell each other all the time, families, parents, kids. And I like that. I like that Americans are not afraid to express how they feel, express their emotions. The culture of eating out. Everybody eats out, if not every day, but a couple of times a week. If they don't eat at the restaurant, then they get the food to go. On the other hand, coming from Europe, coming from Hungary, I prefer a nice home-cooked meal. Yes, there are times when I like to go to a restaurant and try out something, or when I don't feel like cooking, but generally speaking, I would rather spend my money, my time, my energy in the kitchen and make something at home than eating out. Theaters. So you need to know that after London, Budapest has the most theaters in Europe. And when I say theater, I don't mean movie theater, I mean theater where you can go to see a play. So here in San Diego, there's a couple of theaters, nothing compared to Budapest, not even close as many, but you can see a play. Notice that here, when you go to a theater, for the most part, you see a musical, not a play. And I prefer a play. I would like those actors to speak on the stage and not sing. So that was one culture shock, that it was hard to find plays that were not musicals, but just regular plays. The first time when I went to see a play here, I noticed that the booklet they give you in the theater is full of advertisements of retirement plans and nursing homes, and I found it very odd. And as I looked around, I noticed that the majority of the audience was 65 and over. So while in Hungary, while in Europe, younger people go to theater. They like to go to theater and see plays. Here, this is more like something that older people would do. And I think part of it is because the tickets here are so ridiculously expensive. So that's no good. I love theater, but please lower those prices. At least here in San Diego, everybody loves dogs. I would say that they treat dogs better than they treat people. You can go to a bank with your dog, to a restaurant, to a coffee shop. You will find dog treats and water in front of stores. They really welcome dogs. There are dog beaches, dog parks everywhere. They even have a dog bar somewhere. These were the things that really surprised me and shocked me culturally when I moved to the States. If there's anything that stood out for you, please let me know in the comments below. I would love to know what you think. If you like this video and if you like to know more about the US, California, San Diego, don't forget to subscribe. I post every week. I also post educational videos on maternal mental health. So please subscribe and I'll see you in my next video.